All right. Yeah, okay. So, good morning. We start the third day of our seminars, and today we're gonna listen to Julian Vigo's lecture. As you could read in the program and in biographies, Julian teaches in London's Goldsmiths University. She works in performance, critical theory, gender studies, and then she's very active as yogi. Yeah. Then I'm sorry. It went out of my. No. It's okay. Okay, like sorry. Okay. So welcome to them. Yeah. Floor is yours. Yeah. The floor is yours. So
don't worry. I speak into this, right?
Okay, I go to the place and
where, Angela, where are the, oh, there's some here. Okay. I was looking for some of the students, the participants. Do they come in the morning?
No.
No. Okay, no, just curious. Okay. You can hear?
Yes.
Okay. No, yesterday after the workshop, Vahe, who isn't here, had raised an interesting question. We were walking to lunch, and he was asking about a question which I think many of us have asked, especially since Abramovich's 7 Easy Pieces, but it was what happens when you video record performance, right? Is that itself another performance, or is that a fetishization of the performance, or is that, as many contend, I believe, a marketing of the performance, and so forth. And there's many arguments there, and this actually does not speak to that specifically at all, but tangentially, it probably does, in the sense of how do we speak about performance, or how do I show you without having something recorded to show you. And this might cause issues for curatorial processes, or maybe you incorporate this into the curatorial process as well. I do have questions such as, Vahe's, and I've been asking it a lot since Abramovich's 7 Easy Pieces. Ironically, I taught that this past semester, and I didn't watch it because I didn't want to destroy my experience of being in it, So I wasn't in it, like I wasn't under Abramovich's blue dress, but I was in the audience, right? Or were we an audience, were we a spectator, and there's a whole story there to tell. And paradoxically, I was at the performance with the two curators and artists I will be discussing right now. Also, I liked a lot of the questions yesterday, especially Simone, regarding, in fact, this whole, what is this nexus between theory and curatorial praxis? Is there, in fact, and this is a question I have from recent work I've done in gender and queer theory, and to what degree does theory create an offshoot to curatorial praxis, or in fact create the very substance of it? And this is problematic, really, that the form content is actually being mediated by the substance of praxis related to theory, if you follow. And I wonder if that is a problem. And I actually think it is in many cases, not necessarily all cases, but I think we are feeding a certain kind of theoretical machine at points, and I wonder to what degree this is useful or not. This will be perhaps the least theoretical piece I've ever delivered. Good for you, because you won't fall asleep between that and the windows, I hope. In the 1970s, the piece is entitled Curating the Garden, Performing Politics. I might have a new title, but I won't go there. I might retitle it at the end. In the 1970s, the green gardening movement of New York City was a reaction to urban blight, ravaged by inflation, insolvency, disintegration of social structures, and the previous decades. of social ruin and political ruin. New York was pretty much a disaster zone in the 60s, 70s, and mid-80s, until the mid-80s. Ongoing shifts in racial demographics re-established ghettos where abandoned buildings, lack of public services, flight of inner city populations to suburban relocation all contributed to loss of communal identities. These social and economic issues collectively contributed to the DIY, the do-it-yourself, zeitgeist undertaken by residents to develop their grassroots networks and to build up their resources to counter these forms of neglect. The launching of gardens throughout New York City is one example of how lots meaning unused land. Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay. It feels like I can't. Yeah, sorry. Were examples of how derelict lots were reclaimed as local spaces for community regeneration. These pockets of green spaces represented the determined efforts to provide their own food supplements as well as to create sources of cultural enrichment and engagement, celebrating diversity bound by common cause. In New York City, the Green Guerrillas, founded by Liz Christie in 1973, were at the forefront of actions like seed bombing. This is when they throw packets of seeds into unused lots to try to reclaim them, even if they were fenced in, so you could throw over the fence. Seed packets were thrown into neglected areas, creating new plant life in contrast to garbage. In 1978, Green Thumb, a federally funded city program of New York City Parks Department, provided soil, plants, workshops, and other material resources to expand such endeavors. During the 1980s and 90s, gentrification, a word that literally means to repeople, but as if people didn't exist, so it's a very problematic word, but this was very much part of the New York City ethos from the mid-80s onwards. Gentrification was the catchphrase for urban development in New York City, where the more disenfranchised parts of the city, such as Harlem, the East Village, faced the decline of rent control and an increase of urban planners who were eager to work around issues surrounding environmental sustainability. From the mid-90s, many community gardens were formed around the city in response to this attack on affordable property and the removal of poor bodies from the city center. One result of the formation of these gardens was the creation of myriad lawsuits, which were often negotiated by the green movement strength and advocacy. So in essence, lawsuit was considered the way to resolve the problem of this land, because the landowners were forced into settling with green advocates. In the end, many of the lawsuits ended up cutting losses by working with local communities and public land trusts to negotiate alternatives. Is she okay? Yeah. I'm sorry. Oh, there she is. Hi. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. One of the results of the formation of these gardens was the creation of myriad lawsuits that often negotiated the green movement's strength and advocacy. In the end, many of the lawsuits ended up cutting the losses by working with local communities and public land trusts to negotiate workable alternatives for saving spaces that had not only become functioning local gardens, but in many cases these spaces doubled as cultural centers for the community. Resulting from the removal of an illegal drug operation and a chop shop in the 1970s. A chop shop is like an automotive illegal sort of space to cheaply get your car fixed. In 1996, Jack Waters and Peter Kramer formed the Petit Versailles, a Green Thumb garden curatorial space located in the East Village of Manhattan. This is it. Houston Street is on the right, 2nd Street is here. And this is the garden. It's actually a squat also, I should add. Formerly co-directors of ABC No Rio, an East Village collectively run center for art and activism founded in 1980, Jack Waters and Peter Kramer sought to bring some of the values of artists committed to political and social engagement. Waters and Kramer trained dancers and activists, directed ABC No Rio from 1983 until 1991, during which time their programming involved experimental performances, a queer screening series called Naked Eye Cinema, open mic with Matthew, including cabaret and poetry, and exhibitions such as Z Club, a transgressive performance series run by Bad Actions. Keeping this space alive through incessant grant writing, Waters and Kramer lived in the basement and were able to establish ABC No Rio as a non-profit organization, which in the aftermath of the infamous culture wars, the NEA artists, if you recall, Robert Mapplethorpe, Jesse Helms against Robert Mapplethorpe, etc. If you recall that, that's another story in itself. But after this, it was remarkable that they could keep the grant writing going at all. And so the culture wars despite the culture wars, they kept the avant-garde performances and art alive, even in where in New York City, nothing short of this was a miracle, really. More interesting, however, is how the spaces of performance and garden are mutually transforming the identity of performance art and its place of exhibition, while calling into question the roles of the artist, the curator, and the audience. What limitations do institutional spaces, such as galleries or museums, pose for the performance artists and curators of performance? What is the role of the curator in exhibiting new performances and/or reactivating those that have already taken place? What is the significance of performance in the history of exhibition, and what new display methods can it enable? And how do the recent developments in museological shifts towards interactivity relate to performance and archival practices more generally? Moving from ABC No Rio to a couple of blocks north, Waters and Kramer set their sights on creating a new cultural space which took over unused land, invoked squatters' rights, and created an idyllic landscape of green fused with art amidst a rebounding, if not an all too familiar, poverty in the wake of New York's economic boom. May you start the slides, please? Thank you. These are just going to be, while I talk, I'll flip, you can see some of the things that they've actually curated over the years. Le Petit Versailles is a public space located at 346 East Houston Street between Avenue B and C and the East Village, curating events for 6 months each year. Waters and Kramer's nonprofit and artist-run space has turned into one of the more reputable sites for performance art in New York City. Le Petit Versailles contumely lends legitimacy to this alternative space of curation, the public garden as a viable arena for bringing art and politics together, while bringing people from diverse backgrounds together in the spirit of participatory art and political dialogue. Performance has been Le Petit Versailles' strength as community space for effecting political change, while curation has become its own performance of sorts, as both Waters and Kramer, along with others instrumental in the garden's creation, neighbors Jill London and Beatrice Schaffroth, have collectively worked through ideas for art and performance by rendering curation a performance in and of itself. Waters and Kramer place their work within certain historical antecedents, such as the Situationist International, which informs ideas for new approaches to the social spaces of the city. Together with the community, Waters and Kramer have created an alternative public art space that is a cultural oasis dedicated to fostering an appreciation of arts and parks by enriching the public through arts, exhibition, music, film, performance, publications, multimedia installation, and workshops that serve the general locality and visitors from around the world. A recent project is Le Petit Versailles TV, or they call it LPV TV, a 13-part cable TV series for Manhattan Neighborhood Network that documents the history of the garden, its struggles, and successful artistic activities, where citizens were swept up in the police nets of a kiss-in organized by Queerfest during the Republican National Convention. Le Petit Versailles became a locus for organizing in order to breach the gap between art and politics and to provide ways for public engagement on the issues of the war, both Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., police states, sexual identity, urban growth, communalization versus community, and art as a social tool which is not connected to any marketplace. It should be said also, a lot of the artists involved with this and who become also curators over time, like Waters and Kramer and myself, were involved with ACT UP back in the day, and ACT UP's politics also sort of became modalities for reading future performance art, such as ACT UP's works of spreading blood, for instance, in cathedrals in order to raise awareness of AIDS. And this became very much part of later performance art in the 90s, and today, in fact. Projects curated by Waters and Kramer and exposed in the Petit Versailles have dealt with a series of issues affecting all New Yorkers: the correlation of lives lost to AIDS, housing, graffiti, queer representation, folk and new music traditions, experimental film and performance, and the aftermath of 9/11. Le Petit Versailles has ignited a new generation of cultural workers, activists and performers alike, while the ongoing debate about private versus public space and corporate versus local came to the fore, and the performances of art and politics underscored the curatorial project as part of this polyvalent scheme of cultural production. In such arenas as alternative transportation, bike rides organized by Critical Mass, also participant by Kramers and Waters and the Petit Versailles curators as well, others, were policed and harassed. Other public projects, including dedicating the planting of dogwood trees to local firemen, murals and street beautification, became part of this politics and performance of community at times. I'll just let this roll through a little bit so you can see some of what they do. Victor Turner coins the term liminality to define the transitional state between two phases whereby individuals exist betwixt and between. They neither belong to the space of which they previously were a part, and they are not yet reincorporated into the newer social form. They remain perpetually both inside and out. Turner notes that in modern societies present what he calls liminoid phenomena, which are evident in cultural performances such as the genre of art and entertainment, to include theater, concerts, and art exhibitions. Turner remarks that one aspect of rituals in small-scale societies that involve liminality is the presentation of familiar cultural objects in distorted ways, which functions to force participants and observers to think about the basic norms of values of their social and cosmological order, and to reflect on the normal structures of society. He saw this as relevant to modern societies and cultural performances which challenge the taken-for-granted values and attitudes of the quotidian. He also argued that there are aspects of anti-structure in the liminoid which produces a sense of communitas, the feeling of comradeships and connection which is common amongst those undergoing a liminal experience together. This involves the liberation of human capacities of cognition, affect, volition, creativity. This involves the liberation of human, from the normative constraints incumbent upon occupying a sequence of social statuses. The communitas resultant from liminality points to the ultimate possibility of an unstructured egalitarian world. Turner, in his essay Liminality and Communitas, specifically identifies artists as being characters which embody this productive potential. I quote, "Prophets and artists tend to be liminal and marginal people, edgemen who strive with passionate sincerity to rid themselves of clichés associated with status incumbency and role-playing, and to enter into vital relations with other men in fact or imagination. in their productions, we may catch glimpses of that unused evolutionary potential in mankind which has not yet been externalized or fixed in structure." End quote. The role of curator could be viewed also in this way as liminal, as ambiguous movement between fixed identities, where the curator renders this constitutive practice of producing social and cultural constructs while refusing certain relational modalities in favor of creating newer artistic forms and mediating previously obscured subjectivities. I will now examine some of Le Petit Versailles' performance and curatorial projects. Exil Cabaret, which was a performance in April of 2009, is a performance company, and it was their performance inspired by Weimar-era cabaret, which merges historical and present-day explorations on the theme of exile. As artists experimented with exile in the early 20th century, so too artists today are traveling across boundaries and geographical borders and disciplines in search of new possibilities of creative expression and queer identities. Performed by Jessica Goldberg, Mariana Vogt, Bill Solomon, and Darren Chase, this cabaret is a series of performances which are in search of their medium, a search between artistic borders and genre, neither theater nor satire, neither dance nor striptease, neither stand-up nor clown act, neither film nor ethnographic representation, but somewhere in between all of these spaces. Additionally, the mixture between language of German and English, which will inevitably leave the monolingual speaker with yet another interpretation of this queer cabaret performance that breaks the boundaries between high and low cultural forms, and which equally breaks down gender and sexual divides. Can you put number 1 on, please?
When it is here to organize this whole season each year. Thank you all for coming. It's a great honor to have you here.
Sorry, my mistake. Can you put on number 2? I placed number 1 in the wrong space, so we'll skip 1 and we'll just go to 2. Thank you.
Man lebt in eine große Stadt und ist doch so allein. Der Mann, nach dem man Sehnsucht hat, scheint noch nicht da zu sein. Man kennt ihn nicht und kennt ihn doch genau. Und man hat Angst, dass er vorübergeht. Es macht man ihn und bleibt doch seine Frau, bis man ihm plötzlich gegenübersteht. Und da weiß man nicht, was man sagen soll, und es findet alles so banal. Und mein Name doch früher den Mund so voll, und jetzt stottert man mit einem Mal. Alles das, was man sich vorgenommen hat, ihm sofort in einen Augenblick versagt.
Eisler's Hollywood Songbook. Huh? Oh, so sorry. Experimenting with Hans Eisler's Hollywood Songbook, written while in exile in California in the 1940s, Exil Cabaret examines the notion of exile that many artists who escaped Europe felt while in the United States. Exil Cabaret works with the works of Eisler, who set German poems to music, to include many poems by Bertolt Brecht, which touch upon themes of exile. Also is a sort of reminiscence also to Studio 54, which ran cabaret as well. Little is discussed about this, but many of these artists came from that tradition as well. Or like Danceteria, where Madonna was hanging out. Similar to Eisler and Max Kolpet, a Russian Jew who was forced to leave East Prussia, first exiled to Berlin in the 1930s and then to Paris, and then after his parents' death, in concentration camps. Again, he was forced into exile in the United States. A line in Eine große Stadt is a long, famously sung song by Marlene Dietrich, with lyrics penned by Kolpet. This song captures the various performances of exile as the song's lyrics morph geographical boundaries with gendered boundaries, as performed by Exil Cabaret. Can you run this? The third. Thank you. Oh, the video. Oh no, there's a video before that.
Welcome to the Guardians of the 15th.
Three, number three.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's okay.
So it's clear?
That's it. Thank you. just two clips. The piece is series of performances here is more than cabaret. And if you could go to the next slide. Unfortunately, I was limited by the images I could show or the MP4 clips available. This performance resonates the loneliness of the first performance, resonates the loneliness of the city and exile of the self within the crowd, the absolute abundance of having everything anyone could wish for, and within a blink, the city is suddenly silent. One is not alone, and yet paradoxically so very much alone. And one is silent and feels exactly now it is the conclusion that it's not worth. Not worth it once to say a word. Not everything is out of a world of collapsing. One is once again so alone. These are the words that the singer sings. Likewise, in this second piece, Ich war so gern ein Sexappeal, it takes apart the song's title, questioning both what is appealing and what is sex, by in fact a prostitute whose last resort to survival is to create sex appeal as commodity, ripping apart both terms, denuding identity to survival, even embracing the pejorative term of identity. And in the first piece, of course, there was a whole play there with gender and what it means to be alone in the city, not just the exile of, let's say, being out of place geographically, but being out of place and space of sexual or gender identity. This second song was written by Friedrich Hollander, a German artist who also sought refuge outside Nazi Germany in the US, and it deconstructs the artifacts of sex and its entrappings that are caught within the trope of exile. Let's see, could you see what video clip 4 is? Because I've got my clip screwed up on my paper. No, oh, then we'll leave that. What is number 5? Okay, that's great. Go back to 4, please, and we'll leave 4.
Grow up, Dorothy. Let down your hair. Lose that tie-and dress and take note.
Yeah, sorry. That's the next piece. Okay. Basically, though, the second piece, I can translate a bit of what it said. The outside hot and the inside cold, half sax, half peel, taking apart the word sex appeal. And here you have this pulling apart of both the German language through English and then the ironization of some of the words which translate internationally, such as sex, and the peel, which does not, but splitting apart peel, and then the striptease peeling, it's obvious. But so you have the body as the site of its own exile and embrace, never quite at home in the sexual body because sex appeal is never enough, not even a number. When she goes into six, right? Sex appeal of the entire body, and sieben appeal and acht appeal, etc. So she's playing with sex as a number to then take all the numbers through. Soon I will have sex appeal. Am ganzen Körper, sex appeal, and then she goes through the 7, 8 appeal. A more recent production of the Petit Versailles, and this has been really hard for me to find any proper recording of this, is Surrender Dorothy, The Return of the Witches. This was done last summer. And this was again curated by Waters and Kramer, but they weren't present to record it. This was performed by 2 French artists, Evor and Philippe Comtesse. A room full of Dorothy's friends come out for a closing night of French artists Evor and Philippe Comtesse's interactive exhibition. Evor and Comtesse's work invites the public to become part of its dressing outlandishly, witch-like, and becoming the subject of their photos and video recordings. Black and white dress code was the only rule enforced, but the role of actor and spectator was confused, and this installation, which took place over a week's time, unveiled the liminal spaces occupied by performer and spectator, where coded gay speak took on multiple layers of signification in this prequel to The Wizard of Oz, where discerning gay from straight became deconstructed as the lingua franca of representability. and there was this whole play with Friends of Dorothy's from Surrender Dorothy. I'm sorry, I feel like this isn't working right, but Friends of Dorothy's in American English means gay. So in the old days when you wanted to say someone was gay, you wouldn't say that because you couldn't say that, so people would say, he's a friend of Dorothy's, and so forth. So this is how it started. It started with The Wizard of Oz, believe it or not. So, Comtesse Neveu created this performance piece where all the roles were constantly exchanged of artist, curator, and performer. Could you please play this? Thank you.
This one?
Yes. This is just a piece.
Grow up, Dorothy. Let down your hair. Lose that tired gingham dress and take note. Little dogs? So last season. But I'm curious, what is it about being in a magical place that makes you want to go home? There's no place like home? Are you really telling me that there's no place like Kansas? Let's address this matter again, okay? Keep the red heels. They're fierce. They give you some kind of potential. Maybe that's what the Wicked Witch saw in you. And maybe that's why the Good Witch looked at you with that glittery glint in her eye. I know you know what I'm talking about. I saw you go all shy, looking down demurely. I know you felt it. I saw you go breathless when she stood behind you, chanted huskily into your neck, "There's no place like home." She was giving you a chance there, you know, and you blew it and chose Kansas. Listen, darling, one day I woke up in a random bed, head still heavy from whatever drugs I'd taken the night before, totally unsure of what day, week, month, or even year it was, and it was then I proclaimed, "Paula, you are not in London anymore." But the difference is, I like Oz. And yeah, I've met wicked witches, but also good witches. And boys pretend to be wizards at various things. Music, art, technology. Artists pretend to be courageous when really, they were far more cowardly than that lion we hang out with. And take the tin men who could have definitely benefited from having more of a heart. It's overwhelming at times. I totally empathize. It's just, I can't get away from the fact. In fact, I'm a little mystified by the fact that in this magic place with magic heels and that good witch who could have been magic in bed, darling, Dorothy, you chose Kansas? I mean, if you had to go to America, surely New York, San Francisco, Chicago, even Olympia would have been, I don't know, more exciting. Somewhere over the rainbow, you'll see that there are people who trade security for the unknown. And you know what, honey? You might be onto something. There is no place like home. But home, my dear, is where you claim it. But anyways, I'm done with this conversation. I gotta go in a minute. See, I've got this date with the Good Witch. And I was kind of wondering, maybe I could borrow those red heels.
That was not filmed at the Garden, by the way. That was just the only piece I could find of the actual performance. But throughout the performance, the mic would go to various people who were both the official actors and then the non-actors. And then here, again, each performance was very different. So each night there would be an evolution of critique of the performance practice itself, or as she critiqued the role of the artist in essentially calling artists cowards too. And then questioning the narrative of The Wizard of Oz and why choose certain cities and which cities in fact are safe as home. Paradoxically, you have the reversal of what is considered safe or what is considered an exile or an auto-exile, once again. Another open word aspect of Le Petit Versailles is the series entitled, oh, could you go back to the slides, please? Thank you. And could you go one more? This is from the cabaret, Exil Cabaret, because there's clown, it's like everything is in it. And could you go to the next one, please? And more. This is from Exil Cabaret. This is some of the images from, more please. And one more. This is one of the images from Surrender Dorothy. And one more please. And this is a rendering of the painter, of the artist Evor, and what he evoked for Surrender Dorothy. And this is part of the installation art. And one more please. Thank you. And we can stay here. the Red Couch Salon it took its cue from the only place in Warhol's silver factory, the Red Couch. It was the only piece of furniture. Originally found on the street by Billy Name, the Red Couch became the hub for long conversations about art and revolution. When the factory was gone, the Red Couch returned to the street, presupposing this Red Couch's re-recuperation, curated and hosted by Justin Sayre. And Justin Sayre had created events such as the Meeting, Nights of a Thousand Judys. Again, paradoxically, The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland, Stonewall, they're all sort of wrapped up together in gay liberation in New York from the night of Judy Garland's death, right? That's the night Stonewall happened. The Red Couch Salon is a monthly reading and art series held at Le Petit Versailles from June through September. Like the factory's Red Couch, it is set to provide a meeting place to bring new work and discussions together, showcasing the work of emerging and established New York artists. The Red Couch Salon has also become a space for experiments and deep conversations about art in the changing landscape of New York, and it's dedicated to the legacy of the poet and Warhol actor Taylor Mead. So at Le Petit Versailles, you'll have people who are very much part of the tradition of spoken word performance art, people like Penny Arcade, who show up and do new projects on top of her recurring project of, God, I get it out of order, but bitch, fag, no, here we go. Does anyone know the order? Bitch, fag, hag, dyke, whore. I think that's the order of the title. I always get it confused. And so she's re-invoked bitch, fag, hag, dyke, whore again this past year, touring around the world. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. And here we have one of Le Petit Versailles' projects from 2011. It's a performance called The Yiddish Celluloid Closet by Yves Siculaire, which explores the taboo surrounding homosexuality and its subtext within Yiddish cinema. An exploration of lesbian and gay subtext in Yiddish film from the 1920s to the outbreak of World War II reveals distinctly Jewish concerns of the time, intertwined with a striking array of allusions to the highly charged subject matter. From musical comedies such as Yiddel mit den Fiddle, Yiddel with his fiddle, and then Der Filmer, American Matchmaker, Amerikaner Shatkin, American Matchmaker, I can barely see here, I'm very sorry. Two classic dramas, Der Dibuk, the Filmer, Stottchasen, Overture to Glory, and queerness reached the screen in various guises, emerging as an alternate take on themes of conflicted identity, passing and same-sex attachments, discussions of these and other genres of Yiddish screen, as well as features such as Radio Days, Colonel Redel, Crossfire, and Gentleman's Agreement, will be accompanied by clips from selected films and home period movies, as was the announcement for this particular cinema. Could you please play the last clip?
New York is één grootste skatebrink. Negator's Eye.
Je kent die melodie. romantischen Melodie. Die Werke kennt ihr wohl? Wohl nicht? Ihr werdet probieren, es nie zu rein. Wenn auch ihr nicht den Tag auf dem treurigen Spaß und als euch ist verschämt, ihr verbirgt nicht der Welt. Macht es nur, wenn ich klein, auch am Nagelschwert will. Es wird vorübergehen, das Talent zu sehen, wenn auch dir nicht den Tag.
Het verstehen, het zu sehen schon, es ist ein treuriger Spaß.
Jest twoja kwitiny na znamię i mam. Zaraz mi wasza najszczęśliwsza fantazja nicht kenntnis.
Wir verteidigen es.
Darauf will er das schaffen. Jetzt der nächste die Beite. Den macht nächster Minuten.
Mit seinem selber Frühstück. Mr. Gold, hier wird Musikant.
So dass wir nicht spielen. Meint er erscheint? Ich suggestiere, dass wir befinden bei einem Mann, wo es wird alle meinen.